Are you waiting for me to do my intro? Shark Week. Shark Week. Today we're going to be doing like a I'm Scott Jennings and I work out of North West Barber Co in Clitheroe, and today we're doing a nice natural slick back with some tapered edges on Kurt. Cool, so all I'm going to do is saturate Kurt's hair, wet all the way down. I'm going to be cutting the sides first with scissors, then we're going to move on to the top, and then I'm going to blow dry, and last thing I'm going to do is refine everything with the clippers, do some nice tapers. I'm going to use a bit of foam tonic as a cutting agent, just to give the hair a bit of structure while I'm making sections nice and clean. Cool, so choose like 2 pumps and just work it through the hair. Make sure it's covered evenly. Literally all this is going to do is just help me get nice clean sections. We're going to put some sections in Kurt's hair, nothing elaborate or posh or anything like that, just a horseshoe section. I'm going to separate the top from the sides and dip it slightly towards the crown area. So I try and work as symmetrical as possible on Kurt's hair. He's not got any strong growth patterns, nothing that's going to really take me away from doing it symmetrical. So usually just go from the recess, dip it slightly at the back.
Leave the combing like that while you're putting the clip in?
Yeah, it just helps me move the hair out of the way a little bit. And then just another small clip around the crown area. The only thing I do look out on Kurt's hair is he's got quite a long neck, so we usually take the taper like pretty high so we get some longevity out of his haircut. And the area between his occipital bone and the top of his head is actually quite flat here, so I like to leave quite a lot of hair in the back just so there's a bit more density there and you can do a little bit more with it. I've run out of clips. I'm just going to take little cross sections. The hair is going to flow this way eventually, so I'm going to take all my sections that way. And all I'm doing here is removing my fingers from the head slightly at the top so he keeps some length, so he's got some flow. I'm not worried about the bottom half of the hair. After it's been dried, I'm going to refine it with the clippers. So anything down here, not going to be super clean. As long as it's palm to the scalp and it's as short as I can possibly get it, then that'll do for me because I'm going to refine it later. And as you can see, it just creates this flow, and all this at the bottom is going to be refined with clippers later.
So are these scissor sections, are they easier to sort of manipulate because of the foam tonic?
Yeah, it gives it a little bit of like a foundation. Kurt's got quite, I'll say wispy, I don't want to say wispy, but it's kind of got a mind of its own, and if you just saturate it with water, you get to the same end result, but this literally just makes it easier for me. So all I'm doing is using travelling guide from the front, checking my previous section, and when I get towards the bottom, just making sure I'm as tight as possible to the scalp, which is it's basically gonna take less clipper work later when I get there. As I get towards these back corners here, this is where I'll change a little bit. So I want to maintain some length through this corner area so that it like sweeps into the back. So all this at the minute is pretty, what's the word?
Uniform.
Thank you. So all this at the minute is very uniform because I've used the travelling guide. It's not differed from the front to around here, but I'm going to over direct this hair in the corner backwards just to maintain some length through the back. So I'm bringing these sections towards my previous one now. The scissors sound so good when the shop's quiet. So I'm just going to take one more small section so we're past the middle point, and then I'm going to literally flip it and just do the same thing on the other side. So we've got like a good, nice flow on this side now. This is what I was talking about earlier. If I pull the hair out here, I maintain length going into this corner because I want it to flow in. It's something I'm still working on massively. It is so comfortable doing the right hand side of the hair, and I get to this side and I struggle doing it still. I guess, is it a left and right hand thing?
George Cody said the same thing.
Did he?
Yeah.
I always find myself refining this side way more than the other side because I know for a fact that it's not going to be as clean. So with this next bit, I just take a section and it's usually just behind the ear. where the head just starts to drop off a little bit towards the back, so about here. Straight across, and then get rid of any of this hair on the top as well. Don't need to cut it yet. So all I'm going to do now is take probably 3 diagonal sections towards the middle, same as I just did on this side. I'm going to drag one back, and then I'm going to use it as a travelling section from here all the way to the middle.
What do you mean when you say travelling section?
So a travelling section would be one where you cut your guide in, and then with the next section you take, you bring it into that section, and then when you take the next section, you would bring that to the one previous, where a stationary guide would be dragging all the sections into that one stationary one that you set at the start. You can literally just see my previous section, it's a tiny amount of hair. Just that extra bit of length in the corners just helps it all flow together. And I'm going to repeat what I just did on this side. Good thing about this haircut as well is I cut it nice and symmetrical. He can just push it in which direction he wants. I've seen photos of him when his helmet comes off, when he's been playing American football, his hair just always looks good. But it's cut with symmetry, so it looks good pushed in any direction. And that's both sides done, and then I usually just like to pick it up the old school way of barbering and comb it all into the middle and just take off any extra that might be there. So the next section I'm going to take, I'm literally going to determine the shape on the top, and they're also going to determine where the hair is disconnected and where it's connected. I'm going to take a section from just over the recess, and it's going to go diagonally almost straight towards the middle of the crown area. And I know this is done in like 100 different ways with different barbers.
Is it just your way?
I think it was a Rub Barber video maybe that I watched one time. And I kind of want the haircut to be disconnected, probably just in front of the ear. I want the rest of it to be connected, I want it all flow together. So I simply just drag it, pull it straight out. And you can see my guide underneath. That was the triangle that I was talking about earlier, where I wanted to maintain length. I'm going to connect this in. And then I'm in front of the ear now, and I want this to be disconnected. So I'm going to pull it straight out again. Just angle my fingers slightly down. I used to stress about connecting the back and sides on a scissor cut all the time, and it's literally that easy.
You'll watch a lot of YouTube videos, tutorials.
Yeah, I tend to watch a lot of YouTube videos when I feel like all barbers do it. You start to like question your work sometimes in the shop, and you need a bit of a kick in the ass. Watch a bunch of videos, come back, implement a bunch of different techniques that maybe you didn't use before. And key is, take pictures of your haircuts. If you're starting to feel like you're slacking a little bit, I was fine taking pictures, posting them, and then you realise actually, I'm not as I thought I was. Cool, so now we've got back and sides done, crown areas cut, and the only thing we've got now is just the middle profile section. We've already cut this bit, not cut the top yet. I want it to be this shape. I'm gonna start at the back because I've got a guide there and I need to meet it anyway. So it stops me from taking too much length off, and then I'll have shorter area. I'll have to go back and make this shorter, and then I'll have to make the side shorter. So I'm just gonna start at the back. I'm just going to take another little section, and I'm going to use that middle one as a guide. And I'm club cutting this entire thing at the minute because I'm just going to go back and add some texture when it's dry. And now I just like to old school, like grabbing and basically using tension just to connect the two corners. So when I pull this up here in a second, you'll see this is where I blended it into the back and sides. I'm pulling the hair back to where I wanted it to be blended. And I'm just going to take this corner off, and I'm going to pull and use tension all the way back. In not many sections either. I'm going to go back and refine it anyway. So, and that's the good thing about texturizing when it's dry. You can pick the hair up when it's dry, and you might see a bit of weight you want to take out, so you can just point cut out when it's dry anyway. And I'm going to do the same on this side. Little section just to extend that middle section because it wasn't that long. So I've got more of a section to aim for when I go and do the tension. Good thing about the foam tonic as well, you find yourself not spraying the hair as much because it leaves that little bit of moisture in. going to dry it now. I'm probably going to put just one more squirt of foam tonic in it.
It smells really good.
Yeah, it does smell really good. The foam tonic adds that element of heat defense in there as well. You can get your hair super hot and not worry about really damaging it at all. Literally all back towards the centre back here. Touch it now. It hardly feels like you got anything in your hair.
It feels miles different, but it's holding up.
Yeah, holds up loads. You can push it in directions and it stays.
Yeah.
And it's like super easy to style your hair. Yeah. So yeah, all I'm gonna do now is go through little bits where I think weight might need taking out, and I'm just gonna chop into it just a touch, especially in this midsection where it gets a little thick.
Point cutting over a thin scissor.
Yeah, definitely. I think you got more control over point cutting. You can go as deep as you want then. They get called so many different names, don't they? Tapering scissor, thinning scissor, whatever. And the only time I ever use tapering scissors, thinning scissors, is on clipper cuts, and it'll just be tiny little bits of weight in between clipper and scissor that if you was to go in with a full scissor, you'd start adding new lines and stuff. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go in and refine the edges around the ear, detailer over comb, and then I'm going to go in and taper the neck out and then taper the sideburns out too.
What details are you using?
So I've got two at the minute. I've got a pair of Babyliss skeleton trimmers. They are super close. They're what I remove bulk with on skin phase and add like weight lines in with. And then I've got my old Andis, and they're really good for like detailing stuff, so I usually use them with a comb. Instead of using a big bulky clipper and a big bulky clipper comb, this is what I tend to use nowadays. I'm going to taper out the neck next, and because we cut the top and the skin might still be slightly damp, put a little bit of talc on there. And all this is going to do is just soak up any moisture. Kurt's got quite a big neck, so I know that a lot of barbers would tend to make this arc probably a little bit more exaggerated than I do. Yeah, I just don't feel like it's needed on Kurt's hair. There's so much to line up on the edges here that if I was to arc it, it'd end up with these really elongated necklines. So I like to take it, it's almost straight. I'm just going to bold that out with a foil. So I'm just going to go in an open blade now and just set another guide just above it.
What clippers are they?
JRL. They're definitely different to what I used previously. What I've been barbering just over 4 years now, and the clipper to get when I started was a Magic Clip. So I had a super taper, I think, a corded super taper first, and it was horrendous. But I feel like I've been spoiled. I got into barbering when all the good tools were coming out. I even learned recently that there didn't used to be a half guard, there was no 0.5 guard. People just used to flick an open blade out. I used to be a customer at North West, and I used to absolutely love going to the barbershop. I look forward to it every time. It's a lot more community based as well.
Yeah.
Like, I love looking at my diary, especially on a Saturday. The most popular appointments, they're almost booked all year, and you know you've got in. You're excited to come and work, so you know you're gonna have good conversations all day and stuff. So all I'm doing here is just going through my guides from the bottom. I open my clipper up before I set a new guide, and going up like an inch every single time.
So what are your guides as you work through these?
Detailer, open 0, close 0, open 1, close 1. The only guide I didn't set a guide with was my 0.5, so I like to just go in and chip and refine with that. So the way I fade at the minute is I usually pretty much dig in a nice solid guide with my open, and then when I've gone the guide above, I'll come back down to the guide previous, and I'll flick away at that solid guide that I stuck in earlier. Just going back in now and using my corners, blades closed, super light touch. I'm hardly holding the clipper, kind of just balancing it while I'm rubbing it against the head. It just makes sure that I don't put in any lines really. So this being my last guide and neck taper, I don't want to dig in like I did with the previous ones and create more weight. I'm going to flick straight into my scissor work from earlier, and all we're doing now is we're trying to make this transition as flawless as possible. So I'm going to open it up and just properly flick at it, but I'm going to go and refine it back with the scissors later.
What guard has it got on?
A 2.
2 guard, open.
Yeah, 2 open.
Out of curiosity, what do you mean by open and closed?
Basically, how much the blade's open.
Right. Okay.
So I'd say the clipper in itself, this safety guard is a guard basically, and it's got different settings, and it's slightly further away.
How far away the blade is from the edge of the...
Yeah, basically. And there's another thing I like to do as well on haircuts. I know that I left this corner nice and long. It's got some flow, and I usually comb the hair in the direction it's going, clipper upside down, and I just remove any little bits of weight. And the good thing about neck tapers as well, that I absolutely love, is lining it up at the end. So even if you think your neck taper doesn't look amazing, or it's not up to your standards or whatever, after you've refined it a touch and when you line it up at the end, it always makes it look 10 times better. Nothing too harsh with the temple tapers, like I don't want super harsh temple tapers, I usually do them nice and soft. Just going with an open 1.5. Literally just taking a little bit of weight out that's there. And this is all going to come together when I line it up in a minute. I'll just pull this a little bit down and just take any strays off.
It's really quite lovely hearing the extra thoughts that you're bringing out here, because it feels like my haircut's like excessively more personal.
Oh yeah, I always try and make sure, well I probably know what most of my clients do as a job. I know what they do in their spare time. I've seen them out and about, I know how they style their hair. I remember when I started coming to North West for my haircut, I bought a t-shirt. It's when Josh were an apprentice, and the slogan was tailor-made haircuts. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but it definitely was back in the day. It's probably the only line that I'm gonna alter. I'm gonna stray away from the hairline just a little bit, just because the neck taper is probably like it's my highlight of this haircut. I absolutely love how the neck taper looks. So I want it to stand out as much as possible. Lightly breezing over these bits. I'm just going to throw some styling powder in it now and just make it look nice and natural. Good thing about this haircut is it can be super smart, it can be super messy. Styling powder is really good. You can do a really technical styling with it if you're a barber, and then like for people that just want to throw something in their hair and make it look good, it's so easy to make it look good. Mess it up, push it all out of the way, making sure that it's going to get in there. Drop it from a height so you get good coverage. Just work it in. I'm probably gonna make it a little neater today, but if he was to just throw his fingers through it, it looks good. This is my favourite comb. It was 97p.